We make the best equipment, the best missiles, the best of everything. The European nations know that. And we've made a deal today, and I'm going to have Mark speak about it, but we've made a deal today where we are going to be sending them weapons and they're going to be paying for them. The United States will not be having any payment made. We're not buying it, but we will manufacture it and they're going to be paying for it. Our last meeting of a month ago was very successful in that they agreed to 5%, which is more than $1 trillion a year, so they have a lot of money. And these are wealthy nations. They have a lot of money and they want to do it. They feel very strongly about it, and we feel strongly about it too. But we're in for a lot of money and we don't want to do anymore, and we can't. But we make the best, and we're going to be sending the best to NATO, and in some cases to maybe, at Mark's suggestion, if we go to Germany, where they're going to send early on missiles, and they'll be replaced, and NATO is going to take care of it. It's going to be coordinated by NATO, and they're going to work very much with Matt Whitaker.
Matt Whitaker's, he's our NATO secretary. So the President of the United States, he's still having his press conference right now, but he's essentially saying we're sending them Patriot missiles. The NATO's buying them from us, and Germany is buying from us. They're going to rush them in there, and if they're going to get new, they'll give them the old because they got to get some defensive weapons in. That's what Zelensky's been asking for. We also hear they're short on artillery. Now, about the massive sanctions coming from the Senate, where 85 senators have voted for it, it looks like it's going to make its way to the president's desk as early as today. But he'll implement it in 50 days if they don't have a deal. He said 4 separate times, I thought I had a deal. And Putin has done the opposite. Said it and then had awesome, in a negative way, blitzes of drone attacks the next day or within hours of their conversation. With us right now, the guy who's living it, Stephen Moore, former chief of staff of the U.S. House of Representatives and founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project, who raises money to aid the Ukrainians. And great to see you, Steve.
Always great to be with you, Brian.
Better time now. I mean, the president gave an off-ramp to Vladimir Putin, who's lost about 1 million people, over 1 million people, casualties. He's not taking it. And how do you characterize the president's actions as we know him? It's unfolding, but as you know him.
Well, yeah. So President Trump came in. He had the idea that he had a relationship with Vladimir Putin where they could just work it out, right? You know, we're friends. There's a problem here. We can work it out. And it's taken him a while to figure out that the Vladimir Putin of 2020 and 2019, when he was last president, is not the Vladimir Putin of today. And Putin just wants one thing. He wants Ukraine. And then he will roll through other countries in Eastern Europe. He just wants to reunite the Soviet Union. So that's Putin's goal. And unless there's a heavy hand, unless there's something very strong against him, that's what he's going to go for.
So here's a little of what the sanctions would look like if the president decides to sign off on it. Right now he says 50 days, but here's what Senator Lindsey Graham said yesterday, cut 14.
Dick and I have got 85 co-sponsors in the United States Senate for congressional sanctions with a sledgehammer available to President Trump to go after Putin's economy and all those countries who prop up the Putin war machine. China, India, and Brazil buy oil and petroleum products and other goods from Russia. That's the money Putin uses is to prosecute the war. And this congressional package that we're looking at would give President Trump the ability to impose 500% tariff on any country that helps Russia and props up Putin's war machine. He can dial it up or down. He can go to 0 to 500. He has maximum flexibility. But we're going after the people who keep Putin in business, and additional sanctions on Russia itself.
Now, we hear about sanctions at the most sanctioned country, and Peskov has come out and said, yeah, keep sanctioning us. Doesn't matter. What's the reality? Are Russia feeling it? And what would these sanctions do?
Well, what a lot of people in America don't know is that the Russian economy is grinding down into a recession. And part of it's because of the sanctions, and part of it because is they've just leveraged the entire country to fund this war. But
they've made it a war economy. Doesn't that benefit them now? Now they're making weapons. So doesn't that work for them? Wouldn't it be harder for them to stop?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that it's not, so when was the last time you went home and picked up something in your house and looked at the bottom, it said made in Russia? I never have, and that's because Russia doesn't make anything. It's a gas station with an army, and so what are they going to do? Like if there's peace, then they're going to go back to making computers and televisions. Russia doesn't make computers and televisions, so it is a wartime economy. They're geared up for it, and there needs to be serious consequences for them.
Well, is this serious? Is this serious for you?
Which
Lindsey Graham just rattled off?
Oh yeah, and let me tell you, it's not. And the secondary sanctions are good because it's not just the sanctions. They're already pretty well sanctioned. It's the enforcement of the sanctions. And there's, Russia makes money off of oil and gas primarily. And there's a shadow fleet right now of hundreds of ships that are flying under foreign flags. They've got false registrations. They got false electronic IDs. And those are the ones that are selling the oil to China and Iran. And we know where many of these are. And just cracking down on the sanctions evaders is going to be a real key thing here.
So what is it like on the ground?
We left about 10 days ago, and so we were there and let me tell you exactly what happened. Putin was on the phone with Trump on the afternoon of July 3rd, and then he hung up the phone with President Trump, and he hit launch on 537 missiles and drones. And we saw many of them fly by my window. We live in Kyiv.
In Kyiv.
Yeah, so I can tell you exactly what an Iranian Shahed drone sounds like, because they're using Iranian drones because Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are all working together. And so the Ukrainians it's not like the Russians are doing a lot militarily, because these are terror weapons. They're not hitting military targets with these missiles and drones. They are, in terms of the front, they have lost just this year enough people to fill Arrowhead Stadium 3 times. And for that, they've taken an area.
400 a week.
Yeah, exactly. So about 250,000 losses just this year. And for that, they've taken an area of Ukraine about 40% the size of Palm Beach County, Florida. So the president's home county, they haven't even taken that much yet. And so their
goal is to terrorize.
It's a terror
because they're
thing.
hitting apartment buildings, they're hitting homes, they're hitting hospitals.
Well, just last week, the Russians are using kamikaze drones to hunt
and
civilians.
You have 2 of them here.
Yeah, I've got. This is a Russian.
You can hold them up.
Yeah, this is a Russian kamikaze drone, and it was a battlefield trophy. A friend of mine gave it to me, but this is the kind of.
It weighs about 1 pound.
Yeah, well, I've got a Ukrainian one here too. The Ukrainians are much better built, but they're much heavier. This is, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 pounds, and this is probably 1.5 pounds. But they use these drones, the kind that I have here, they use them to hunt civilians. They call them a human safari. They actually killed a 1-year-old infant in a village.
It will follow you.
Yeah, they hunt people with these things. One of the pastors we work with in a place called Kherson, they targeted him because he drove out of a church. And they hit him with a drone. He survived, fortunately, with his 3 children in the car.
So what I understand, too, what makes this really insidious, I'm kind of encouraged by the fact that Syria is no longer a bastion for Russia. So they no longer can flow the Shahed drones through Syria over. So I thought that was great. And then I find out, and tell me if I'm wrong, that they basically got the patent for the Shahed drones.
Yeah.
They don't need Iran.
Yeah.
So they can make it themselves.
Yeah. Well, and the Russians have sent about $4 billion to Iran for these drones, and they're making them in a place in southern Russia. And so there's a factory there. Now, there may be components that they have trouble reproducing, and that maybe the Iranians have not sent them. But I got to tell you, man, ever since President Trump took out Iran, there's actually been no slowdown. So I keep waiting for maybe they're going to run out of some particular part in these Shahed drones. And these things are big, man. They're about the size of this table, and but they're coming at a very high rate. 537 a week ago Thursday was the record number, and it's already been broken. Every attack is a record number.
I heard it was up to 700.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you don't block them with Patriots.
No, and actually, they are relatively easy to take down. You can take them down with machine guns. You can take them down with anti-aircraft fire.
That's a lot.
Yeah, you can take them down with electronic warfare, jam them. But there's a lot of them, man, and that's a lot of people with machine guns.
So is there more of a feeling of optimism that America understands that we've reached our edge? Do you have a sense yet? Because Zelensky put out something very positive. They had very good conversation.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, Ukraine is the most pro-American country I have ever been to, and I'll give you just one example of I was visiting there before the war, and I needed to go downtown. We were trying to park. My translator rolled down the window and asked someone if she could park in their parking garage. They said, no, it's full. And she said, I have Americans with me. And he's like, oh, you have Americans? Oh, okay, great. And he lifted up the
wow,
yeah.
Great.
And our support is crucial not only on a military level, but they looked to us as the bastion of freedom, and they're fighting for their freedom like we did, in 1776.
Right, and I think the president's come around on that. I'm pretty confident. This what Vladimir Zelensky put up 4 hours ago. I met with General Kellogg, the U.S. Special Forces Special Envoy. We had a productive conversation. We discussed the path to peace and what we can practically do together to bring it closer. This includes strengthening Ukraine's air defense, joint production, and procurement of defensive weapons in collaboration with Europe. And of course, sanctions against Russia, and those would help. We hope for U.S. leadership, as it is clear that Moscow will not stop unless its unreasonable ambitions are curbed through strength. I thank General Kellogg for his visit to Ukraine. I'm grateful to President Trump for the important signals of support and the positive decisions for both countries, and we deeply value the support of the American people. So,
wow, great statement. Yeah,
that's it.
Unambiguous. Yeah.
And Zelensky, if there was an election today,
well, so
in Ukraine?
Yeah, well, interestingly, prior to the White House Oval Office dust-up, Zelensky was polling in second place. And then after that, after he got in the fight with President Trump, he's back in first place. And, it's like the Ukrainians are like, he can't do that to our president. Only we can do that to our president. So there was a...
Same with Canada.
Yeah.
Canada was helped. Same thing, but we understand. The other thing is, who would be the alternative? Poroshenko?
No. So all the old politicians are, not gonna happen unless things wildly change. What the people want is they respect the military because the military has kept them safe. You got to think this military has taken on the second largest military in the world, and like Ukraine has sunk 40% of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, and Ukraine doesn't have a navy, man. So the people of Ukraine want a military leader because that's what they respect right now.
They deserve it. They deserve our support, and I think that NATO is adding 2 countries, new emphasis on defense. They could sell it to their people as a practical threat. For all, sadly, but that's what they needed to know, that Russia is legitimately a threat.
Yeah.
So there are no more Nord Stream 1, no more Nord Stream 2. They're going to look for natural gas to America or some other outlet. Hopefully they understand what the threat that Russia is. Listen, a few more minutes with Steve Moore when we come back to the Brian Kilmeade Show.
So this whole idea that there's going to be a schism in MAGA, it's the ongoing fever dream of the left, that there's going to be a schism. First it was Iran was going to create a schism in MAGA, then the CBS poll came out and showed 96% of MAGA supporters supported the strike. So the idea that the Epstein thing is going to create a schism in MAGA is a little bit rich.
So what do you think, Lawrence Jones? That's Mark Thiessen yesterday on Fox News Sunday saying that the whole thing with Pam Bondi saying there is no list after saying there was she goes, I have files on my desk. Mm-hmm. And then them saying that he killed himself, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi killed himself. Something happening with Dan Bongino where he says, I'm not coming to work on Friday, I might quit. Mm-hmm. Me or Bondi. And Megyn Kelly said she had a source that confirmed that. So how does this play out? And why is it a big deal?
I remember watching on I think it was Netflix, The Last Dance, and they were talking about the story of Michael Jordan and when he was on the Dream Team. And I remember one of the quotes from one of the players, because you got a team of all-stars. They are the captains of the team. They're known, all that. They have their own fan base, yada, yada. And they said in the room full of alphas, there was one alpha, and it was Michael Jordan. And I think that's what we're seeing play out in Trump world right now. You got a lot of big personalities. You got a lot of people that are used to being the leaders in their own perspective. But there's one president. And when a president makes a decision, that is the decision. I can tell you this from my reporting, what I know for a fact, the president is 100% behind Pam Bondi right now.
There's no question. And he made it clear on Truth Social. But the DOJ memo went out, not signed by anyone, that says the systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. No client list, died by suicide.
I think, this is what I can tell you from my sources. I don't think it's so much about the list where the infighting is coming from. It's the rollout of the list, right? Remember the social media people that they brought out and with the binders and everything. And when you look into it, there was nothing in the binders. And so I think some of the friction right now is that some people feel like there was going to be this big rollout of something when some of the people that actually read the documents at the time knew it wasn't going to be anything.
I think this is the clip with John Roberts that got everyone's hopes up. Cut 23.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump.
And then she came back and said this last week. Cut 24.
I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. And that's what I meant by that.
And some people interpreted it that first initial interview with our John Roberts was that there was a list. She said it was a file. But again, I mean, the damage has been done in the sense of people were expecting something, and it didn't necessarily happen. Now, we know for a fact, because of our reporters in the interview that we did from the FBI, is that there was nothing there. There was nothing there. That's what they told us on the record. They told us that that it was a suicide, and they're feeling that the Department of Justice kind of, awakened or gave some credence to the beast. Now, the president, I think he's saying, hey, I'm going to make both sides sit down, knock it off. This is my administration. Get back to the mission of the American people.
But they have to come out with some type of statement because these people have a turning point over the weekend. Listen to Megyn Kelly.
Who have you seen? Pam Bondi. She has never missed an opportunity to go on television and dangle sweet nothings that might be coming your way. Try to lead you to believe that she's got it. It's on her desk. It's coming tomorrow. You're going to see something on Epstein. And it was a tease. So you either believe that Pam Bondi was telling the truth then or that she's telling the truth now. But both cannot be true. She was either lying when she went on Fox News all those times saying, I've got it, we're looking at it, wait until you see it, it's horrible.
There's only one.
Or she's lying in her 2-page memo that they released on a Sunday night at the tail end of a holiday weekend to Axios, as if Axios is where we all go for our news. Hell no. She went to someone she knew would not kick the tires on the story, and without signing the memo, dropped it in the dead of night and said, that's it, take the crumbs and be happy. Make some noise if you care about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
Your thoughts? That's a young group, under 30s, Republicans, conservatives.
Look, I can say some of my criticism on the micro level that I would have handled it this way, but I just think sometimes in MAGA world, I won't even say in MAGA world, I would say some of the influence, they get so caught up in the weeds of things. You got to realize who the enemy is and who the enemy isn't.
It's not Cash Patel and Dan Bongino.
It's not Cash Patel, Dan Bongino, or Pam Bondi. They may have some disagreements on the rollout there, but we wanted a Department of Justice that was fair and wasn't weaponized. And they got to focus on that. Now, they're supposed to be rolling out some stuff that they found about the weaponization of the department. I want to hear that news. I'm not interested in this make-believe scandal.
Right. All right, Lawrence Jones, always great to have you on.
Brian.
See you tomorrow.
Congratulations.
With me in studio is Congressman Jodey Arrington, House Budget Committee Chairman, fresh off the passing of the big, beautiful bill turned law. And we should talk about, your position right now. You have one of the hardest jobs. I talked to Jason Smith earlier, tough one, Ways and Means.
Yes.
But so would you. When you looked at one big, beautiful bill, there was a big pushback in the Senate side, do it too. And then the Speaker said, no way. We got to do it at one. I got too many diverse opinions and approaches and objectives where if I can't tell them, go with me here and I'll give you this, I can't do it. So you went with one. You did it.
Well, he was right. We needed all the carrots: defense, border, tax cuts, fiscal reforms, which I'm a big fan of, given that my seat as budget chairman and this unsustainable debt trajectory our country's on. They all had to come in play. We had the smallest majority in the House in 100 years. We could only lose one vote. We lost Thomas Massey's vote. You couldn't lose any votes beyond that to get the resolution, which unlocked the process. Look, at the end of the day, it wasn't going to be perfect. It's sort of the Reagan 80-20, record tax and spending cuts, record energy deregulation, record and generational welfare reform. All in all, our country's safer, stronger, more prosperous as a result.
What was the challenge with undoing the Inflation Reduction Act, which is really the new Green Deal? What was the challenge with unwinding some of that? Why wasn't it easier?
Well, like a lot of issues, you have single-member district interest that come into play. There are some members who have a lot of wind and solar and other renewables, and so there was
if you're
more
not
sensitivity.
subsidizing that all of a sudden.
And yeah, absolutely. So there was that. The bigger picture, I think, was that these were distortive, these were regressive, these were causing inflationary energy prices for working families. The president was against it. I was in the first meeting with him, with just the House guys when we were working on the resolution, the fiscal framework that unlocked it all, and he was clear he wanted it all gone. But we had to work through that. There was the other issue was there were projects that were underway. They'd either commenced construction or they'd raised money, and there were a lot of folks that said, "Hey, let's change the policies, but let's not pull the rug out from folks who depended on
you got
them."
workers.
And I think that's fair, and I think we struck the right balance. Look, what we did to repeal or wind down not only the tax credits but also the projects saves $500+ billion of about a $700 billion tax subsidy. So I think we did well. I think we leaned in on the conservative side on that, got some other fiscal reforms in Medicaid, SNAP, altogether record $1.5 trillion in spending cuts. That's twice as much as we've ever cut in the history of the country.
And I know the Republicans believe that if you can grow at over 2.5%, that you're not going to add to the deficit. And CBO says you're going to grow at 1.7%.
Boy, you're good, Brian. That's not many people can keep up with all these numbers, but that's absolutely correct. The CBO has the same basically annual average GDP or growth rate assumption that they had under Biden's policies, failed economic policies, tax, spend, regulate, and their horrible unbridled spending that caused 40-year high inflation. Their estimate was basically the same as under the last 4 years in those failed policies. We know for a fact, not having the model, just best way to predict the future is past performance. Trump had a 2.8 GDP rate prior to COVID and was on the rise. Record corporate revenue from the tax cuts, more capital, repatriation of capital overseas, record R&D investment, lowest poverty rate in recorded history. All these things were happening because of the Trump tax cuts and deregulation and other Republican policies. We picked a 2.6 annual average rate. We were conservative because I wanted the gravy above that, which I knew we would be able to achieve, to go to deficit reduction. So that is the big gap. You're right, between what CBO says is going to be adding trillions of dollars in new debt to what I believe will not just be a balanced resolution process or offset the deficits, but I think we're going to see the debt and deficit to GDP come down over the 4 years. And we haven't even seen the savings and discretionary spending that's up next. And we already got record revenue from tariffs, another conversation altogether on the policy, which I'm for.
Are you in on those deals, by the way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm on the trade subcommittee, and any self-respecting sovereign nation would not tolerate the unfairness with which our companies, manufacturers, producers, and workers are treated. It's gone on too long, and there's a real problem economically, but also supply chain dependence and national security implications. We saw it with COVID. We have to address it. Trump's got the will to do it. No one else has. It's been decades of unfair practices that have to stop.
And you saw what Senator Tom Tillis said. He said, well, basically, Obamacare, the president, when they passed Obamacare, Obama lost 63 seats in the House. He said, stop this, don't pass this bill, Mr. President. I'm telling you, you're getting bad information. Here's a little of what he said, cut 41.
I'm telling the president that you have been misinformed. You supporting the Senate mark will hurt people who are eligible and qualified for Medicaid.
And he went on for about a half hour and then said, I'm not going to run again. So he's from your party. What is he missing?
He's missing the facts. The facts are at least 80% of our voters across the party lines want us to steward their tax dollars and prevent people ineligible, illegal, receiving benefits, and otherwise hurting the sustainability of these important safety nets for the vulnerable American citizens who depend on them. They also support able-bodied adults working when they're receiving social services. It's part of the social compact. And we've trapped people in poverty and dependence on the federal government for too long. So he's missing it. Obamacare failed. Prices went up. We lost choice. It was a failed experiment.
Didn't he expand Medicaid?
Yeah, he expanded Medicaid with a 90% match for healthy, able-bodied adults and about a 60% match on pregnant, disabled, blind, elderly. That's the immorality of this, is that expansion and that match from the federal government has oriented our entire health system around these able-bodied, healthy American citizens who could get Obamacare or some other subsidized insurance. Right now, the second-class citizens per Obamacare and Democrats who supported it unilaterally are the poorest and sickest among us. And that is a reform that we should have taken on. We didn't. We did other reforms, but we didn't take that one on. That's why I still think there's fiscal reform meat on the bone if we should go for another reconciliation bill.
Congressman Arrington's in studio. So, Congressman, I'm sure you know that only, for the most part, polls say only 38% of the country approve of the bill. Is that part of the reason why I had Jason Smith on today? I had Dr. Oz on Fox and Friends, and you're here now? Is it time to message?
Yeah, absolutely, because you got to separate fact from fiction, and there's certainly, full bore Democrat.
Because you're proud of the facts.
Absolutely. Look, more people, especially working middle-class families, will keep more of their hard-earned money. Prices will come down. The economy will grow. Our sons and daughters in uniform will have the tools to be safe and successful in providing for the common defense. The president gets the tools and resources to secure the border. We'll stop trapping people in a cycle of dependence in these welfare programs. This thing is going to do great things for our country. Is it perfect? No. But nobody has to be ashamed, and especially these accusations that sadly Tillis is repeating of the Democrat narrative and fear-mongering that somehow people eligible or some sick, vulnerable person that needs that safety net's not going to get it. That is patently false. And by the way, the proof's in the pudding. I think our best success was getting it done early enough that by the time midterms come around, people are going to feel this in their pocketbooks, in their future quality of life, in every measure. They're going to feel it, and that's going to make all the difference.
Have you felt the difference of the border in Texas? I mean, you're over in West Texas.
Yeah, I'm in West Texas, but every community in Texas has been deluged with criminals and crime and drugs especially. Absolutely. I had a couple of press conferences back in West Texas about the big, beautiful bill. And I had sheriffs and other local law enforcement saying this president just showing up and having the political will to enforce the laws and to prioritize defending our sovereign border has fundamentally shifted everything. But he needs resources to complete the border wall. He needs resources to do the detain and deport as opposed to catch and release.
But you got it, right?
We got it. We got every cent of what he asked for. And it's not just to lock it in for today, it's for the future.
Hey, we are back, and it's my privilege to have in studio, first time in a long time, Dr. Mehmet Oz. But now he's got a new job, more important, doesn't pay as well, but he's not doing it for the money. Medicare and Medicaid Service Administrator, that's his new job. And of course, this is the 60th anniversary of Medicaid, state fund medical program meant for the elderly and the, and would you say handicapped? Would you say the disabled?
Disabled. I call them the vulnerable. So young kids, 53% of kids are born into poverty, so they're on Medicaid or, there's CHIP, which is Children's Health Insurance. You've got the elderly folks who maybe worked their whole life, maybe not, but they've come to an age and they're out of money, so they need help, so Medicaid protects them. If they have some funds, then Medicare protects them. Both these programs were started 60 years ago this month. Both of them are the backbone of our social safety net programs, but it's a two-way street. Medicare is there for you, but you need to stay vital and healthy as well as best you can. So taking precautionary steps, not eating carrot cake like I tempted you with. I brought you an apple too, by the way.
Right, but if you've seen on the stream, you have a birthday cake for Medicaid.
I have a Medicake.
Medicaid.
Medicake.
Okay, got it.
A Maha Medicake.
Right,
but
always producing, right?
Always producing.
You got the TV and you got the medical.
Boom, boom. Be here all week. Try the corned beef. But the beauty of Medicaid and Medicare is that the government, perhaps one of the best examples of it all, is there as a safety net program to help you out. But it's a two-way street. And what happened recently, much of it during COVID, was we began to pervert the system. We began to cheat. So, for example, if the federal government is paying most of the tab, the states began to hack the system so they could get extra money from government. They would pay for illegal immigrants, for example, in California, knowing that the taxpayers in Mississippi, they don't know any better. They're just paying to the federal tax bureau, and then that money gets recycled back to California to pay for illegal immigrants. We were paying for transgender transition surgery, right? Mutilation of children for allegedly helping them, which is not scientifically proven to be true, but that money was partly coming out of the federal treasury. So again, people in Texas were paying for that, not knowing it. And so we decided we're going to be transparent. And when you learn more about these problems, you get upset about it. So the president said, we want to get rid of fraud, waste, and abuse. And they happen in multiple different areas. Fraud happens because if you don't know who's supposed to be on Medicaid and not, the same person can be in multiple states pretending they're living in those states. Each of those states get paid by the federal government, so the governors don't care. And that's $14 billion a year.
And that explains why it was so important to verify your eligibility twice a year. Correct?
That's why we believe it's a sane move, not every month, not every 2 weeks, but every twice a year. Tell us what you're doing. It's also important because 60 years ago when Medicaid was created, it never dawned on anybody that you would be an able-bodied person and stay on Medicaid.
But is it a way to get universal health care? Didn't they talk about universal insurance? That's what Democrats have always wanted. But fundamentally, you're a doctor. You want to make sure that everyone gets an equal shot, but the best you can within our system that makes it sustainable, that keeps the smartest people as doctors and keeps our technology cutting edge. We still got to stay ahead of the curve. So it's tough to mix in capitalism and health. That's fundamentally your challenge, isn't it?
It's a shared responsibility.
Yes.
And shared responsibility works when all the stakeholders agree that we got to do something together to make the system work. I was handed an agency when President Trump nominated me that was in financial distress if you look into the future. So Medicare, the trust funds predicted to go bankrupt. We just had this announcement 2 weeks ago in 2033. So we have 7 years left. Medicaid was going to draw down massive amounts of money from the Treasury, and it's not providing quality. The thing that people sort of gets to me when the Democrats complain about this is it's not like the system's working great for everybody right now. It's working good, but not great. So if you got number 3 cause of death being medical errors, we ought to get better at that. If we have patients having the exact same experience scheduling a doctor's appointment as they did 60 years ago when Medicaid and Medicare were created, that's the problem. We need to modernize the system. So this one big beautiful law, what it actually also does is give us $50 billion for infrastructure to rebuild the system so it's capable of being more efficient and dealing with and addressing some of the opportunities that the 2025 offers us.
So when this bill passes, you gave your advice on what to do, but there's so many moving parts in this huge bill from defense on down. Medicaid is the big area where Senator Josh Hawley weighs in and says, don't touch it. My whole state of Missouri is financed by it, it seems. And then you have Chip Roy going, what are you guys not doing enough? How could the Senate not do more to cut this back? And then you have Democrats who don't say, well, I don't like the bill. They say, for example, Larry Summers says, 100,000 Americans will die because this bill passed. The most significant cut to social safety net in history. So, I mean, if you're just someone on the outside, go, I'm not going to read 980 pages. Literally, it's 980. What do I make of this? Where's the truth?
The president was very clear when he said he wants to love and cherish Medicaid and Medicare.
Right.
Did not touch Medicare at all. And the Medicaid program, he said, take out the fraud, waste, and abuse. That's all we're doing. We're returning this system to the way it was before COVID, basically. There's all kinds of changes. I'll give you an example. Last year, under the Biden administration, they said that you could pay a doctor taking care of a Medicaid patient 3 times more than a Medicare patient's doctor. Now imagine this. Medicare patient, older gentleman, woman, worked their whole life, put money into the system their whole life. They come to the retirement age, they get their Medicare, and now the doctor's getting paid 3 times more to see somebody else. Well, guess what happens? All of a sudden, you're at the end of the line. And that Medicaid patient, who's an able-bodied individual who hasn't worked for whatever reason, never was pushed to work, is trapped in this place that they're living in, where they're generally watching television, 6.1 hours TV or leisure time a day. They're not really, because they're bored. And their lives are not going anywhere. So we're enabling that behavior. They get to pay their doctor more. Now, that's not right. What did the states do? They immediately began to recruit as many able-bodied people on the Medicaid as possible. And then they would collect massive amounts of money. I mean, I'm talking about more than $100 billion a year of money. We said, guys, that's not the system. That was not how it was created. The founders of Medicaid, who were Democrats, Lyndon Johnson was a Democrat. Patient number 1 was Truman, a Democrat. They never envisioned that it would work for able-bodied people. In fact, every Democratic president, including Bill Clinton, who did the welfare reform, which brought work requirements into these programs.
And what happened?
Worked. Dramatically increased number of people in the workforce, increased the people on these programs who got out of poverty because they decided to work. Look, you have agency over your future.
Also, people that were scamming the system said, well, I might as well just get a job, because I can't sit back and just lay back. So instead of you telling me to go volunteer somewhere, I'll go get a job.
Yeah. And
so it cut down the number of people on welfare.
And it's not even a work requirement. It's a community engagement. Go get an education. Go volunteer somewhere.
Do you guys help them get something?
We want to do all that. It's a brilliant question. We don't just want to figure out what you're doing. By the way, 91% of people on Medicaid have smartphones. And what we're doing already in 2 states is pilots to show you on your phone, tell us where you're working, and we will calculate how many hours. Well, no, because it's those payroll providers work for these companies, and we get the people in the gig economy as well, Uber drivers, who count them all, whatever you've done. The point's not to hurt you, it's to nudge you forward, to urge you to do the things you should be wanting to do for yourself anyway.
So let's say you're making $50,000 a year, but if you live in a place like New York, you're having trouble even making the rent, you have to decide what's going to happen. Well, if I'm in my 20s, stats say I'm not going to get insurance. Nothing's going to happen to me. So maybe insurance is maybe the last thing you get. So what do you say to people who say, okay, now I'm not eligible for this new Medicaid because you expanded under Joe Biden, you expanded under Obama, really, and then you expanded even more under Biden, and all of a sudden I find out I don't qualify. Where do I go?
Well,
to the exchanges?
The exchanges are an obvious place to go. Let me give you a real-world example of what happened. 18 months ago, under duress, the Biden administration realized they had to course correct. And they had 15 million people come off the Medicaid rolls. 15 million people. No one talks about this, but the Democrats realized that this is really a crisis. Of those 15 million people who came off Medicaid, 10% became uninsured. 90% of people found a way to getting health coverage because they were eligible for it, and took a lot of the fraud away as well. This is the real unwritten story of all this. If you can game the system, you might, but a little bit of a push in the right direction. And people, look, I trust the American people. I have confidence in the American people to take a deal like free health insurance for trying to get a job or getting an education. That's a pretty good trade-off. If you're not willing to take that deal, there's something else going on. Democrats argue because they don't have confidence in the American people, no one's going to take that deal. They're going to want to sit down and watch more television. They're not going to get forced out of their home because you're saying you're going to take away their insurance. This is how you keep healthy programs like Medicare and Medicaid alive for 60 years. Go to Europe and see what's going on there, where they have generational poverty because they've trapped people in a program where no one you ever met, no one you were related to has ever had a job. That's not what America's ever been about. If you can work, you should. If we can connect you to a job, to your earlier question, we're going to try to do that. Programs like that exist, but there's no reason for you to check if there's a job available if no one's pushing you to get out of your basement.
Have you been able to exhale enough, instead of do the emergency situation with Medicare Fix It, Medicare and Medicaid Fix It, to take a deep breath and even think tank it, this is my word, with like, what is the big answer here? Because nobody wants someone without insurance. Fundamentally, nobody says, well, because you don't have money or you have, doesn't matter. I don't care what state you live in. We all have the same objective, give people the best health care possible. How do you not hurt the system and make it financially workable? What is the greatest burden on our budget? It's this, Medicare and Medicaid. So have you guys ever had big picture talk about revamping the system? I mean, Mark Cuban talks about this stuff all the time.
Yes, and I've spoken to him, by the way, as well, Mark, but many others, my whole adult life. I went to business school at Wharton because I wanted to know how to organize large groups, but also fix systems like this. The basic problem is that productivity in healthcare is 40% of the general economy. It's not an efficient system. Now, part of it's never going to be efficient. You're taking care of people with lots of problems. But we never really brought technology into the services part. If you go to a doctor's office right now, you got to write your name, your address, all your information.
I know, it takes forever.
But it's also a wasted effort because often it's not done correctly. The biggest problem we're having with changing prior authorization, where we got all the insurance companies to come together and voluntarily agree, put some pressure from us, to go out there and get rid of one of the most painful complained about problems where you're trying to get care for your doctor and there's some insurance company getting in the way. They're saying doctors don't talk to us using technology. They send us paper files. We have got to modernize American medicine. It is the ultimate solution for a lot of reasons. First of all, because it's more efficient, you'll cut at least 10, 12, 15% of the healthcare budget that you don't need to waste on paperwork and need this redundancy. Second, you'll get doctors with decision support. They'll be able to get advice about how to better care for you so they won't make mistakes. You'll help patients by communicating with them frequently about what's going on in their life based on their medical record. You can opt out, by the way, but if a patient wants to know about themselves, we'll tell you. But here's the part that's great. We have a massive target on our back. Foreign countries are attacking us. Last year, I announced with the DOJ and FBI and OIG that we have the largest ever shutdown of a $15 billion scam. I mean,
Which was what?
So the Russians, we believe, Russian mafia, not believe, we know this. We went after and arrested whoever couldn't get back to Russia. We arrested, when I say we, the DOJ, FBI, the government, the law enforcement of the government realized with us, because CMS, we have a bunch of really smart guys. We have a whole war room that goes out there with a bunch of, just so you can imagine a room packed with whizzes, with, out there on their computers, finding people trying to hack our system. So we're almost a $2 trillion agency. So people want to get into our bank. Our piggy bank gets raided not just by politicians, but it gets raided by foreign governments trying to steal money from us. They steal Medicare and Medicaid numbers. They use them to pretend they're in the system. Then they start to make these false claims. Now, here's the good news. Of the $15 billion that we shut down, only 2.9 got out the door. Once it's out the door, it's back in Moscow. It's overseas in the Cayman Islands, right? So you have to stop it from leaving America. But we stopped $12 billion, and we're getting better. When was this? A week and a half ago.
Wow, that's awesome. Did DOGE help?
DOGE helped a lot. DOGE is, people criticize DOGE for many unfair reasons, but there's no question that DOGE has been effective at getting people to stand up straight in their chair and do their homework. They're tech whizzes, so they come into the system. They're the ones who identified we had $14 billion stolen from Medicaid because people claim that they're on Medicaid in multiple states, or Medicaid and the AC exchange, Obamacare in the same state.
So they identified, did they fix it? Or it's up to you to fix it?
It's up to me to fix it.
Okay.
What they're good at is catalyzing awareness. It's up to me to fix those problems. But the beautiful thing about being in this administration, it is the best job I've ever had. And I've had your job. I've been in media. I've been in the OR as a surgeon. But I've got a great boss. President Trump is engaged. He'll call you up. He'll hear this interview and make some comments about what I've said right or wrong. But he also gives you a vision for what we need to do. And time is not our ally. The more we sit around doing nothing, the more people make up reasons to stop us. We want to stay one step ahead of people who are trying to slow the process.
And he learned that the first time.
And he learned
that the first time.
And he acted on it.
Yeah, he certainly is. He's acting like crazy. Can't believe it's only 6 months. A couple more minutes with Dr. Oz on the 60th birthday of Medicare and Medicaid. Back in a moment. A few more minutes with Dr. Oz, who's got this new job as Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator. And even though you've had these great jobs, you just said this is your favorite because it's certainly the most rewarding, make the greatest impact. But what is it like? Because I watched RFK, the HHS secretary, and he said, I'm with my friends. These are the people I go on vacation with. So when you talk about Macquarie and Dr. Oz and you, what is it like in there? I mean, is there a sense of camaraderie?
So Bobby has called us publicly renegades because Marty McCary, who's running FDA, Jay Bhattacharya, who's running NIH, myself, it's CMS, and Bobby, of course, is our boss running, he's Secretary of Health and Human Services. We are like a band of brothers. We've been through a lot. Every one of us got canceled during COVID for different reasons. And we're vindicated and are now back trying to make the system work better that was so erroneously making decisions during COVID. But it's been decades of errors that have culminated in some of the challenges that we're facing. And I think Secretary Kennedy, Bobby, sets a very good example. We do vacation together, spend a ton of time working at issues, which is very different from what has happened in past administrations where people literally were at each other's throats. Think about this. If I can't open the Medicare database or Medicaid database so that the NIH can study pathology that's hurting the American people, so that the FDA can make better solutions to deal with those problems, and the secretary isn't talking to anybody, that's not a system. What President Trump, and he sets the standard, he wants silos broken. Watch how many times cabinet members, by the way, we mostly know each other and have known each other for a while, but most of us went through hell over the last couple of years. And so when you come together and you have an opportunity, you are mission focused and you don't waste time, but you also aren't going to create fictitious barriers. I was with Kash Patel on the 4th of July during the bill signing, and he's very quick to say, listen, if there are things we can do together, sometimes you actually need the FBI involved to take out fraudsters. Because if you got, important...
Like you just mentioned.
Like I just mentioned, the $15 billion takedown was only happened because the Department of Justice got involved and all their allies together with all of our allies. Otherwise, I'm doing my little thing with the Office of the Inspector General. They're doing their little thing with subpoenas and no one's talking. We work together. We send a chilling effect, especially to foreign countries, because they're weaponizing this.
So I know when it comes to nutrition, you're wide open. I watch your shows and you probably have knowledge you don't even realize that you've retained from the years hosting with different insights. But when I looked at Dr. Cassie, a traditional doctor, and he was worried about RFK, not a doctor, and some of his beliefs on vaccines, this is your friend. But are there certain things that you as a medical doctor are not comfortable with that RFK has said or done when it comes to vaccines?
Well, 10 years ago, I had Bobby Kennedy on my show to talk about vaccines. And at the time, there was a lot of criticism about me hosting him, giving him a platform to talk about his message, right? Which is the classic argument. I mean, it's the whole point of having the show, right, is to be a honey badger, right?
Yeah.
Honey badger don't care, to tell the truth. So he came on and he said, please read the first line of the book. This is while I'm trying to figure out whether to overcome the resistance. First line of the book is, I'm not against vaccines. He said, read the last line of the book. Flip to the last page, I'm not against vaccines. What Bobby Kennedy is saying is very straightforward. If you truly love the people around you, like a parent to their children, wouldn't you kick the tires, double check the work, just to make sure, just because you care? He's not saying these things don't work. He's saying if you are worried about fluoride in water or toxins in the environment or red dye number 2, I'm going to kick the tires.
Right, and he's doing it with nutrition, doing it with vaccines, doing it with everything. Dr. Oz, great to see you. It better be quicker than last time. It's been too long.
I will come here whenever you want. I love your work. I love everything that all the noises you make are fun to hear.
Thank you.